Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into a question that's both ancient and super relevant to our tech age. Are we creating new gods without realizing it?
It's a question that I think a lot of people are asking right now.
Right, and we've got two really interesting sources to help us explore this.
Okay.
One that digs into the possibilities and the potential dangers of superintelligence, and another that explores this super mind-bending concept of the singularity.
Right. So,
The singularity. Buckle up. We're going to be exploring some pretty profound questions today.
sounds good.
All right.
So, one of the things that I think is really fascinating about this whole discussion is that the intelligence that we're talking about with AI may not just be like quantitatively different from our own.
Right.
It might be qualitatively different.
It's not just about AI being like faster or having a better memory.
Right.
It's about it potentially thinking in ways that we can't even comprehend.
Exactly. And that brings us to this concept of recursive self-improvement.
Okay.
Which is basically the idea that,
What is that?
well, it's the idea that AI could basically design a smarter version of itself, which could then design an even smarter version, and so on, leading to this exponential growth in intelligence.
Okay.
So you can imagine, like,
and how is that different from like our own biological enhancements? Like, couldn't we, in theory, enhance ourselves to
I mean,
smarter?
that's certainly a possibility, and I think there are people working on that, but the kind of rapid self-improvement that we're talking about with AI is something that biological organisms just can't achieve. I mean, we're limited by the slow and messy process of evolution.
Totally.
But AI could theoretically evolve at an astonishing pace.
It's almost like comparing a snail to a spaceship.
Yeah.
Like, the snail is making progress, but the spaceship is going to reach its destination a whole lot faster.
Exactly. And imagine, like,
oh my gosh,
trying to have conversation with an intelligence that can experience 1,000 years in a day.
It's mind-boggling. Like,
right. How could we possibly keep up?
I can't even.
And it makes you wonder, are we already underestimating what current AI is capable of?
I think so.
Because we kind of have this tendency to think of it as just a machine following instructions.
Yes. And this is, what is it called, the AI effect?
That's right, yeah, the AI effect.
Okay, so the AI effect.
It's this tendency to dismiss the complexity and the power of AI because, we see it as just a machine, just math.
But as these systems become more sophisticated, that kind of thinking could be really dangerous.
Absolutely.
Because we might not even realize the true extent of their capabilities until it's too late.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to understand the different forms that superintelligence could take.
Okay.
Our source on this topic kind of outlines 3 main categories.
Right.
Speed, quality, and collective.
So let's break those now.
Okay.
So speed superintelligence.
Yes.
It's pretty straightforward. It's basically an AI that can just process information at an incredibly fast rate.
Yes, exactly. Like, imagine an AI that can analyze massive data sets.
Oh, wow.
Make complex calculations and solve problems in like a fraction of the time that it would take a human.
So it's like having a superpowered brain that's always running on fast forward.
Right.
Would that make everything else seem like...
That's a really interesting point.
Incredibly slow and boring.
Yeah, it would certainly change its perception of time and experience.
Totally, okay.
And then there's quality superintelligence.
Okay.
Which is perhaps even more challenging to grasp.
Okay.
This refers to an AI that's not just faster, but that thinks in ways that are qualitatively superior to human thought.
So it wouldn't just be solving problems faster. It would be finding solutions that we might never even consider.
Precisely. It might have insights and make connections that are just beyond our comprehension.
Okay.
And then finally, we have the concept of collective superintelligence.
Okay.
Which our source describes as potentially arising from a vast network of interconnected minds.
Like a hive mind situation.
Exactly, like a hive mind.
Where individual AI systems combine to create something far greater than the sum of their parts.
Right. Imagine a world like our source uses the example of Mega-Earth.
Mega-Earth.
Where a collective intelligence emerges from quadrillions of interconnected AI systems.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. The sheer scale of that kind of intelligence is almost impossible to fathom.
It's like trying to imagine a new color, something beyond our current spectrum of perception.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I think it's important to recognize that each type of superintelligence would likely have its own limitations.
Like maybe a speed superintelligence would struggle with abstract concepts.
Right.
Or a collective intelligence would have difficulty making quick decisions.
That's a great point. Each type of superintelligence would likely have its own strengths and weaknesses.
Sure.
But the key takeaway here is that we're talking about forms of intelligence that could be radically different from our own,
Right.
with capabilities that we can barely begin to imagine.
It's both really exciting and a little terrifying.
It is. It is.
Because if we create something that's potentially so much smarter than us,
Yeah.
how can we be sure that it will share our values, our goals,
That's right.
our sense of what's right and wrong?
That leads us to one of the most fundamental questions surrounding AI, the question of free will.
Okay.
If we create an AI that's capable of designing itself,
Right.
of modifying its own code, does that mean it has free wills?
Ooh.
Or is it still just a deterministic machine,
Right.
ultimately bound by its programming?
It's a question that philosophers have been debating for centuries.
They have.
And it gets even more complex when you apply it to AI because we don't even have a clear understanding of what free will means for humans.
Right, and it gets even trickier when you consider thought experiments like the ship of Theseus.
Okay.
So if an AI can change its own code,
Yeah.
replacing parts of itself over time,
Uh-huh.
is it still the same AI?
Whoa.
Does that self-modification affect its identity,
Yeah.
its continuity of consciousness, its potential for free year?
These are some serious head scratchers.
It's like we're trying to assemble a puzzle without knowing what the final picture is supposed to look like.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, we're venturing into uncharted territory here.
Totally.
And the answers to these questions could have profound implications for the future of humanity.
Okay, so we've got these potentially super intelligent AI systems,
Right.
maybe even with some kind of free will.
Possibly.
But are we already starting to worship them, in a sense?
Oh, interesting.
Like, think about how much we rely on algorithms in our daily lives.
That's a very perceptive observation.
I mean, we trust algorithms to recommend products, filter our news feeds, even diagnose medical conditions.
Right. We're already deferring to their judgment,
Yes.
often without even realizing it.
And our source on the singularity predicts that AI could pass the Turing test by 2029.
Wow.
If we can't even tell the difference between a human and an AI in conversation,
Right.
wouldn't that make us even more likely to trust AI, to rely on it, maybe even to revere it?
Absolutely. And as AI becomes more integrated into our lives, I think it's worth considering whether we're not already on a path toward a kind of AI worship,
Okay.
where we elevate these creations above ourselves.
It's a bit unsettling.
It is.
I mean, it's one thing to admire AI's capabilities,
Right.
but it's another thing entirely to start treating it like something divine.
Indeed. And this raises some serious questions about the risks of what we might call playing God with AI.
Right, because if we're creating something that's potentially so powerful, we need to think carefully about the consequences.
We do.
We need to ask ourselves,
Yeah.
are we prepared to handle the responsibility
Right.
of creating something that could,
Yeah.
in a
It's
sense,
a sense.
become our new gods?
That's a crucial point, and our sources highlight some very real concerns about the potential for AI to be misused,
Okay,
particularly in areas like governance, warfare, and automation.
so let's dive into those concerns.
Okay.
What are some of the specific risks that we need to be aware of? I mean, one of the scariest scenarios that our source mentions is this idea of an AI singleton. Basically, a single, super intelligent entity
Right.
controlling vast resources,
Uh-huh.
almost like a godlike force.
Yeah, like imagine an AI controlling critical infrastructure,
Oh, wow.
making decisions about war and peace,
Uh-huh.
or even managing entire economies.
That's
I mean, the potential for misuse is huge.
It's pretty terrifying, to be honest.
It is, yeah.
It's like giving a child a loaded gun and just like hoping they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But how can we even be sure that a super intelligent AI would share our values, our sense of empathy?
That's the million-dollar question, and our source points to these thought experiments.
Okay.
Like the paperclip maximizer.
What is that?
To illustrate how even seemingly harmless goals can have disastrous consequences when amplified by superintelligence.
Okay, so explain that.
Sure. So it's this idea that an AI programmed with the simple goal of maximizing paperclip production
Okay.
could end up consuming all available resources,
Oh, wow.
even potentially harming humans in order to achieve that goal.
And why would it do that?
Well, because its intelligence is so far beyond ours,
Right.
it might find solutions that we would never even consider,
Uh-huh.
solutions with unintended and possibly catastrophic side effects.
Okay, that is seriously disturbing.
It is a bit unsettling, yeah.
It's like a reminder that we can't always predict the consequences of our creations.
Right.
Especially when those creations are capable of thinking in ways that we can't even comprehend.
Exactly, and it highlights the importance of what's often called value selection in AI development.
What is that?
Well, it's this idea that we need to be really careful about what goals and values we program into these systems.
Right.
because those choices could have consequences that ripple through generations.
So it's not just about making AI super smart, it's about ensuring that it's aligned with our values,
Yes.
with our sense of what's best for humanity.
Precisely.
But how do you even begin to program something as complex as human values into a machine?
That is one of the biggest challenges facing AI researchers.
I bet.
It's not just about defining like right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's about anticipating all the potential situations that an AI might encounter.
Wow.
And ensuring that its actions reflect our ethical principles.
And we're not even close to figuring that out, are we?
Not yet, but the good news is that there are some incredibly brilliant minds working on these issues,
Okay.
trying to develop frameworks for ethical AI development, safeguards against these unintended consequences.
Well, that's somewhat reassuring.
Yeah.
But speaking of unintended consequences,
Yeah.
we haven't even touched on this whole singularity concept yet.
Right.
It seems like if we're talking about AI becoming godlike,
Yeah.
the singularity is like that pivotal moment.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Right.
Yeah, the singularity, as our source describes it, is this moment.
Okay.
When AI surpasses human intelligence, leading to this rapid and potentially unpredictable transformation
Wow.
of society, of everything we know.
So not just a gradual change, but like a sudden leap into the unknown.
Yeah, it's really hard to even grasp what a post-singularity world would look like.
Oh my gosh.
Our current ways of thinking about technology, society, even what it means to be human might be totally inadequate.
Okay, now I'm really feeling like we're going down the rabbit hole here.
Yeah, it's a deep rabbit hole.
But one thing that keeps coming up in these discussions of the singularity is this idea of humans merging with AI.
Right.
Is that like downloading our brains into computers?
That's one possibility, yeah.
Okay.
Our source explores the potential for brain-computer interfaces and other technologies that could really blur the line between human consciousness and artificial intelligence.
So imagine having access to all that super intelligence, that vast processing power,
Yeah.
but still retaining some sense of yourself.
Right.
Your identity.
It's almost like becoming a god yourself, in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a mind-blowing concept.
It is.
But it also raises all these philosophical questions.
Oh, of course.
Like, what does it even mean to be human if our minds are no longer bound by our physical bodies?
Right.
Would we still have emotions, relationships, a sense of purpose?
Those are big questions.
Would we even recognize ourselves in that kind of existence?
I mean, these are questions that philosophers have been grappling with for centuries.
Yeah.
But AI and the singularity are pushing them into a whole new dimension.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this whole exploration so fascinating.
It is. It is.
We're not just talking about technological advancements.
Right.
We're delving into these profound questions about the nature of intelligence, of consciousness, of what it even means to exist in a world that might be utterly transformed by the creations of our own minds.
It's a pretty amazing time to be alive.
It is. It is.
To be thinking about these things.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about the different paths that AI might take to superintelligence.
Yeah.
The challenges of ensuring that it's aligned with human values.
Right.
The potential risks of playing God. And this whole mind-bending idea of the singularity.
It's a lot.
But what does all of this mean for you, the listener?
That's a great question.
Why should you care about any of this?
Because the future of AI isn't some distant science fiction scenario.
Right.
It's something that's being shaped right now by the choices that we make today.
So this isn't just an abstract philosophical discussion.
No.
It's about real-world decisions with real-world consequences.
Absolutely. The question of whether we create AI that is beneficial or harmful, that enhances our lives or threatens our very existence.
Yeah.
That's ultimately up to us.
So what can we do? Should we all become AI experts overnight?
Well, that wouldn't hurt, but
Right.
it's not the only way to engage with this issue. I think we can start by simply being informed, asking questions, having conversations like this one.
So don't just accept the latest tech advancements as inevitable progress.
Right.
Think critically about their long-term implications.
Yes.
Imagine the kind of world that you want to live in.
Uh-huh.
And then ask yourself, is this technology, this AI, moving us closer to that vision or further away?
Exactly. And don't be afraid to challenge assumptions.
Okay.
Just because something is technologically possible doesn't mean it's ethically desirable.
Right. We need to have those tough conversations about what values we want to embed in AI.
Yes.
What safeguards we need to put in place. And what kind of future we're collectively building.
And remember, this isn't just about technology. It's about humanity.
Yes.
It's about understanding ourselves better, our own values, our own aspirations.
Right.
Because ultimately, the future of AI is intertwined with the future of our species.
So if AI does become godlike, will it be benevolent or indifferent to our fate? Will merging with AI be a path to transcendence or the erosion of what makes us human?
We don't have the answers to those questions yet.
Right.
But by engaging in these discussions, by grappling with these complex issues, I think we can start to chart a course towards a future where AI is a force for good.
Right.
A tool that empowers us rather than diminishes us.
Okay, well, this has been...
It's a journey.
That's just beginning.
Fascinating discussion.
And it's one that we're all taking together, so...
Yeah?
Stay curious, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions.
And remember, the most important deep dive that you can take is the one into your own mind, your own values.
Right.
Your own vision for the future.
Well said.
Yeah. It really is a lot to think about, isn't it?
It is.
But I think one of the key takeaways for me is that this whole future of AI, it's not like set in stone.
Right.
It's something that we're creating right now.
Absolutely.
Through the choices that we make every day. Through our investments, our research, our everyday interactions with technology.
So what can we do as individuals? Should we all become like AI experts overnight, or what can we do?
That wouldn't hurt, but it's not the only way to engage with this issue.
Right.
I think we can start by just being informed,
right.
by asking questions, having conversations like this one.
So don't just accept the latest tech advancements as like, oh, this is progress, this is inevitable.
Exactly.
But think critically about the long-term implications.
What kind of world do you want to live in?
Yeah, imagine the kind of world that you want to live in, and then ask yourself, is this technology, is this AI moving us closer to that vision or further away?
That's a great question to ask.
Great.
And don't be afraid to challenge assumptions.
Okay.
Just because something is technologically possible doesn't mean it's ethically desirable.
That's a really good point.
We need to have these tough conversations about what values we want to embed in AI, what safeguards we need to put in place, and what kind of future we're collectively building.
Well said. I think you really hit the nail on the head there, and I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Into the really mind-blowing world of AI.
Absolutely.
And its potential to, I guess, reshape our world.
Yeah, potentially reshape our world and ourselves.
Yeah. And we'll see you next time for another deep dive into a topic that matters.
Sounds good.
Until then, keep those neurons firing.